The number one thing, and I think that it was what makes this industry very unique from my perspective, is that competitors work together in the space. I've heard the word used, coopetition. I've heard, all sorts of things. I'll be on the phone with a member and they're like, oh, my direct competitor's truck is in our yard right now. But if a company wants to go in and really be a turnkey provider, and again, if we're handling all types of industrial liquids, the likelihood that I'm actually treating all those liquids is probably fairly low. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I now have access to what we're calling Enfinite 24/7, where they can come and meet these people and have dinner with them, develop a relationship.
Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast, where we bring you interviews with industry leaders, climate champions, sustainability practitioners, EHS and hazmat professionals making an impact in their businesses today. Each leader solving complex challenges and delivering solutions within their areas of expertise. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and thanks for joining us today. Before we jump in, make sure to follow us on your devices and visit my website at www.seankgrady.com and sign up for our newsletter and email announcements. Now let's get started.
Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guest is Scott Parker. Scott, he serves as the Executive Director of Enfinite, the Industrial Liquid Recycling Association. He's been with them since 2002. The association has over 340 member companies. Enfinite connects, educates, and protects the industrial liquid recycling industry and adjacent services. Parker has managed various environmental trade associations for over 30 years, and he has served on the board of directors of the Buy Recycle Business Alliance, co-chairman of the American Recycles Day, and also has been a judge of the White House's greening the government contest. And so Parker has been, he's earned his bachelor's degree of business administration and from James Madison University. And, James Madison, that sounds familiar. Is Kurt Signetti, did he go there? Was he coaching there?
Yes. And he's been upgraded a couple pay grades since. Yeah, listen, I wish Indiana all the luck. I had family that went to Indiana, but it's a little bit like, your ex-girlfriend. I hope she's doing well, but I'm not going to come to the wedding if she gets married. So Kurt Signetti is a great coach, though. He's fantastic.
Yeah. No, we're happy to have him here in Indiana. And so I just saw that. I was like, just hit me there. I was like, we're doing pretty good right now. So we're riding high. We're pretty high over here. So it's pretty great.
Sean, with that, I'm going to have to cancel the podcast now that I know you guys stole our coach.
Sorry about that, but welcome to the show, Scott. I mean, This has been great. You and I met, actually it's been a little over a year ago, but we've seen each other twice recently and at the EI Digest gathering in San Diego, where I learned more about NORA and then now Enfinite. You guys rebranded this past year. And I wasn't aware at the time that there was an association that was an advocacy association for all the liquid industrial waste service providers in the industry, which is really great what you do. So, let's start there. Let's give us maybe a big picture overview, Scott, of, what you guys are doing and what inspired you to, transition from NORA to Enfinite, and how does that reflect on the evolving goals of the association?
Well, first off, Sean, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a great program you put on here. I think actually I'm going to just kind of do a quick history recap, but your point exactly, which is I wasn't aware that an organization like this existed, was really one of the main reasons why we had to rebrand, right?
Yeah.
If you're in this space, if you're putting on a podcast, if you know everything about everything and you don't know about us, that's a problem for us. If we go back and we look just quickly, EPA was founded in 1970, then 1980, the Used Oil Recycling Act was signed by Congress, advocating for recycling of used oil. That was the beginning. That was the genesis of the organization. Okay. By 1984, the EPA was supposed to have promulgated rules regarding used oil recycling, and they had not. They were dragging their feet. And what happened was there were some companies or some individuals that were advocating for used oil to be designated as a hazardous waste. Whereas 4 companies got together in 1984, just 4 got together and said, you know what? Used oil can be beneficially reused. It can be used as a fuel, a recycled fuel. It can be re-refined into new lubricants.
Right.
Well, that obviously, that was the beginning. So these four companies got together. They started what was then called the National Oil Recyclers Association. That was the proper name at that time. And the interesting thing, Sean, was they were successful. Okay. And what that led to the used oil management standards that were done, and our organization was part of it. Meanwhile, the organization was growing. Then we started realizing, oh, our members are also handling wastewater. So in the 90s, we also were responsible for working with EPA on developing the centralized wastewater treatment standards to make sure that they were protecting the environment and were achievable. Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to 2000, again, I'm fast forwarding here to get you through this, but
No,
we merged with a group that was involved with antifreeze and parts cleaning and all these things that were adjacent services. The organization changed their name in 2000 to just NORA.
Yeah.
So they because they wanted to broaden the base. That was fine, and that lasted, for another 15 or 17 years. And then we quickly realized that I was actually trying to sell someone a membership one time in our organization. And this guy told me, this is exactly when it started. As a matter of fact, I said, hey, we'd like you to join our organization. And even though they handle some oil, they did a lot of other things. The company's
Right.
evolved. He goes, well, we're not really an oil recycling company. And I said, well, we're not really just an oil recycling association. And it was that at that point, I realized that NORA was too limiting for us, even though it was a great vessel to get us to where we are. Then we spent a couple of years, Sean, going through this rebrand. We had a strategy meeting. We did focus groups. We saw how other associations had failed in rebranding because it can happen very easily.
Yeah.
And we brought it together. And that's when we were able to, just last November, rebrand as Enfinite, the Industrial Liquid Recyclers Association. And that really we're sticking close to our core. And the great thing is our industry has evolved. We need to make sure the association evolved. And this name helped us mirror what that evolution looked like.
Well, the name is genius, really. Scott, I don't know if that's you who came up with this name, but if it is, that's great.
I had a little help, let's put it that way.
Because when you think about it, and I saw your little your rebranding video on YouTube, and it's the infinite possibilities or infinite ways you can recycle a product, a liquid waste, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's because there's so many different products, whether that's glycol, solvents, caustics, methanol, used oil, obviously, right? There's just so many different waste streams that are liquids that are able to be recycled. It's infinite. Right. And the possibilities for the reuse is infinite. And so kudos to you for that, because that was really great. I like that.
And by the way, the domain name was available. So that was also a benefit for us.
Yeah, that's even better, right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can see your challenge of trying to gain new members when your name is NORA, the National Oil Recycling Association, because they're like, well, we do a little bit, but that's not our main game. Our main game is, maybe it's solvent recycling. And, about Crystal Clean. Come on, those guys, they're huge in solvent recycling. Of course, they do oil recycling too. And so does a lot of other companies. But, it was, I can imagine it was a little bit limiting and restrictive for you're attracting new members because they had a different association of what you guys really did do.
Totally. And, I think one of the greatest you have these aha moments, right? It's like, wow, okay, now I get it. For us, I sit here at our association headquarters, I don't operate a truck or a facility, and I really have to allow the members help me understand what they do so I can help represent them in a variety of different ways.
Right.
And at one of our meetings, it was maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I put about 40 of our members in a room. It was a hollow square. And I had people going around telling me about how they, how these companies had diversified.
Right.
And many of these companies diversified in a similar way, but many of them were diversifying in different ways because of the local markets, because of local industry, whatever it might be. But there was one commonality. Okay. And the fact is that these companies had permits and operations that could handle primarily oil and water. And because they had permits and health and safety standards and trucks and all these things, that in vac trucks, guess what? that was the beginning of them saying, oh, because I'm doing this and because we're going to every generator that exists in the country, we can also provide these other services that they need here. So
No.
that kind of was the platform to get them to whatever they're doing. And you look at these companies, many of them look similar, but man, a lot of them, they're very unique to their particular marketplace. But oil and water was where it starts, but that's not necessarily where their growth opportunities are.
Yeah, they probably might have bigger revenues with other services than just oil, which is fine too. It's
Yeah.
just that springboard them into that area of the business, which is great. Infinite members recycle billions of gallons of industrial liquid waste annually. What are the biggest operational or regulatory challenges that they're facing today?
It's a great and a very big question. It's hard to answer that within the time frame of the podcast we have here. But I will tell you that because the members have diversified, it's not like there's like one thing. We can't handle this one constituent that is coming in the oil or something like that. There are several. I would say, kind of overall with the entire sector, a lot of it has to do with just maintaining the top. And you saw this at all the presentations at the event we were just at, maintaining a culture of environmental health and safety, that health and safety aspect of it.
Mhm.
By far, I think, we heard, when a garbage truck turns over, okay. When a truck carrying oil or water or whatever we're handling tips over, or, we have an injury. So that is in fact, one of the things, Sean, you may not know this, but we actually started about 13 years ago. Every year we have an environmental health and safety conference that we bring in our professionals, the owners of the company, and we talk about best practices. We bring in police officers. We talk about the latest technology in rail. So operationally, I mean, that may not seem as interesting, as opposed to something else. Clearly, we still continually have occasionally problems with PCBs ending up in oil that we may pick up. There may be some other things, but I would say just overarching health and safety. That's step one. Nothing else happens without health and safety first. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead. No, go
I
ahead,
was
Sean.
gonna say another area that just struck me during our recent conference both were at was the operational challenges of getting qualified drivers.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
seemed to be a
Well,
big pain point, if I recall, for all of them.
yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be more downward pressure next year on availability of truck drivers. But here's the interesting thing that makes our sector even more challenging than your over the road drivers. Okay, a lot of times, drivers. I'm speaking generally here, but they like the solitude sometimes. I'm just going down the road, being myself. Taking care of my job and doing those things. Our drivers have to do that. In addition, they're going to when we're doing these collections that we're going out, we call them milk runs. We may
Yeah.
be picking up 500, 1,000, 3,000 gallons at a location. We're showing up there. Then our drivers also have to have a customer service aspect of it because they're interacting with that customer there. They also have to be trained in all the health and safety things because they may be climbing on top of a truck. They may be going into a different situation. So we need super truck drivers. In fact, the drivers in our space are so highly coveted and qualified. Now, one of the advantages that we do have, though, is many of our drivers are able to stay sort of local, right? They're not driving across the
Yeah.
country and coming back.
Right.
Typically, not always, but typically they're in that general range. But yeah, truck drivers, a huge issue. I mean, if we don't collect the material, we can't recycle it. So,
Well, and a lot of them, they need their hazmat endorsement too. So there's the regulatory side of this as well for those guys, hauling, and they've got to make sure the paperwork's properly signed off on, and they've got placarding requirements. I mean, it's DOT and RECRA and/or EPA regulations. It's a lot there for those drivers. And you're right. I think they are fairly coveted, personnel for any operation.
yeah, you're exactly right. And there's more to that. And then the second part of your question had to do with regulatory.
Yeah.
And probably, and I think we'll be talking about this a little later on, is PFAS. Obviously, that is probably the
Sure.
biggest thing here. But there's a lot of nuanced issues. So if you go back again, without what we used to be NORA, without NORA, the entire used oil regulatory system would not be in place. The water system would not be in place. But today, it's a lot of nuanced things. Like we're dealing with an issue in Illinois that they're interpreting one acronym by the wrong name. And so it changes the sulfur limits. We've gotten involved in issues in New York as it relates to parts cleaning equipment. And so probably for your general audience, they would get a little bored if they started to hear the nuanced things, but they're all really important because, most of our companies, even the largest companies, to be honest, but most of our companies, don't have someone in Washington, D.C. And, oftentimes we describe ourselves as a tip of the spear. And so we work together. They help educate our team here, and then we represent them before whatever group that needs to be represented. So, but yeah, there's a lot of nuanced things. And again, if someone is really interested, give me a call and I can go through it with you. But it gets pretty boring pretty quick.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about, I mean, it sounds like, my understanding of what the organization does to support the industry is you are doing, I guess, a little bit of lobbying of the legislatures, the Congress for various regulatory policies, right? And you're in Virginia, you're in the DC area, if I recall. And so maybe talk about how Enfinite is supporting its members by navigating complex environmental regulations, or especially around merging contaminants like PFAS you just brought up.
Sure. Now, let me just talk about PFAS for a second. I might want to compare it and contrast it with two different situations. There are certain issues, right, that we take the lead on as an association. And it's very common in Washington, D.C., even though we think our industry is huge. In terms of the lobbying market in DC, we're very, very small. Our budgets, our influence is pretty small. So we typically work in coalitions.
Okay.
So let me talk about a coalition that we recently formed that we were the lead on, and then I'll talk about PFAS in an opposite way in just a second.
Sure. Yeah.
So back in back 4 or 5 years ago, there was a move at the started in Vermont, but then kind of bled down to the U.S. EPA, and they're going to put something out for public comment. Again, anytime something goes out for public comment, it just is like, who knows where it's going to go. And they were looking to change the definition of what oily wastewater is. Okay. Today, basically, if it has oil in it at basically any percentage, it can be managed under the used oil rules. Okay. EPA was looking to consider changing that to be that it had to have more than 50% oil in it to be managed under that.
Oh, wow.
That's very uncommon.
That's a high bar. Yeah.
So, if you have this now, what ends up happening, one of the things that we're seeing happening in Washington, D.C. is, think about this. Most of the environmental regulations were drafted in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
Guess who's retiring? The people that wrote those rules in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
So there's a new generation that's coming up. So we went ahead, we brought a team of people in through the Small Business Administration to EPA, and they had their water department there, they had their oil department, and we helped them understand with real life companies how these regulations work together to protect the environment. Once they understood, and I think we were able to have some back and forth, they pulled back from that position and did not send out for public comment. The point of that is that we created what we call the Part 279 Coalition. Part 279 is the used oil management standards.
Mm-hmm.
And we had about 7 or 8 different associations that fell in line with us, and we took the lead on it. Now in PFAS, right, man, PFAS is going to be with us for a long time as an issue.
Right.
We are the part of the sector, right, that is the ones that are going to be taking it and managing it before it is discharged to the water authorities.
Right.
We are now a member of what's called the PFAS Coalition in DC. It's made up of municipalities. It's made up of different trade groups, and we are the one trade group in there that is helping them. And then we're not the lead on that one, but we are an integral part as they interact with EPA directly to understand what is achievable, what's the new technology that's there. And so we are the voice, we're the mouthpiece for all the companies that are trying to figure out this very muddy environment, right? Of what's the future of PFAS management going to look like. So that's where we are on that.
Well, that's really good too, because I'm sure the industry is looking for someone to help represent them with these conversations with, from a policy perspective. I mean, the EPA just recently came out with some new proposed, changes to the existing rule that was just approved last year. That they were going to pull back on a lot of things. So, and extend some of the deadlines. So it's like, wow, okay, how is this going to affect the industry, right? And then who's talking to EPA to help them understand maybe the challenges from the service provider's perspective. And that's good to see that you guys are in there either through coalitions or directly helping, advocate for the industry.
Yeah, we meet a couple of times a year. We meet more frequently if we need to. That PFAS coalition meets once a month. And if there's information that they need from our side, because there's other people involved in there, we help them understand that. One of the things that I was very happy to see EPA did, and I think we heard about this, is that they have now revised, the secretary there has revised how often they're going to come up with suggested treatment options. The initial list that came out, there were 3 potential options they had on the table, which included storage, which is not a great option, deep well injection, and a few others. They now committed to releasing a new report once a year. Our members are involved in all sorts of research and development, as you might imagine. We're the ones that are treating the water, and there's a lot of different technologies that are coming out. How do we do it? The great thing that when a company, again, becomes part of any trade association, including ours, they realize, hey, I can go to the meeting, then I can go home and try to make sure I can balance the budget of the company, make money doing this, and realize that they have an organization that is representing them, before whatever group. And then we have to raise our hand, raise the red flag when we say, hey, we need more information from you. And that's sort of the back and forth. So it's a very efficient model for members.
Oh, that's really good. I mean, that's great to see that you guys are doing that type of advocacy and supporting the members, and then getting that information. It's a two-way street. It's back and forth. You guys are providing information back to the members, and that's really good. I mean, so, we talk about supporting the members. I know you have a very large conference coming up next month. You want to talk a little bit about that, if we could, before we dive into a few other questions, Scott, because I think this is a great opportunity to kind of tee up, what you guys are doing there in Florida for your big annual conference, and why should people in the industry come and attend? Maybe they're not even a member yet, but they need to be. So talk about this. Talk about it.
Sure. Again, it's thing about the rebrand, and it's us having to help companies understand why they might want to involve. What we've been finding is that the strongest possible way that people start to say, hey, that's a home for me, that's where I belong, is by people looking at our 340 member companies and going, hey, I'm partners with them, I'm competitor with them, I buy from them. They realize that this is their marketplace. And again, that's what's led to our significant growth over the last couple of years. It's just 100 new members in just the last 2 years. Anyway, regarding the upcoming conference, we have a very specialized industry education program, great speakers. But probably the most important thing is the networking that goes on there. We'll have a trade show. We'll have 57 companies displaying everything from trucks to insurance to health and safety technology and AI, all sorts of different things to drive efficiency. But probably the number one reason by far that, yes, we're involved in DC and helping people on the government affairs side. And yes, you can come to some of these nice events that we have. The number one thing, and I think that it was what makes this industry very unique from my perspective, is that competitors work together in this space. I've heard the word used, coopetition. I've heard, all sorts of things. I'll be on the phone with a member and they're like, oh, my direct competitor's truck is in our yard right now. If a company wants to go in and really be a turnkey provider, and again, if we're handling all types of industrial liquids, the likelihood that I'm actually treating all those liquids is probably fairly low. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I now have access to what we're calling Enfinite 24/7, where they can come and meet these people and have dinner with them, develop a relationship. And my big mantra here is that people, think about this during COVID, right? Oh, Zoom, we don't have to go to meetings anymore. We'll just go on Zoom. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You know what? I've come up with a little phrase here that people do business with people they know and trust.
100%.
And how do we get to know each other? We get to know each other by getting together, meeting face to face. I get to like you by having dinner with you, finding out about your family. Now the trust comes in, and man, how easy is it to do business with people you trust?
Yeah.
And so the number one reason is that if someone looks at our list of member companies, they're going to say, you know what, I've never been able to do business with them. We have everybody that attends our meeting is a decision maker, every single person. So if you come there, you're going to be able to drive your business. And anyway, it's all about the networking. It's all about business development and building relationships.
Well, I couldn't agree more on the approach there.
Hello, ET Nation. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're enjoying the interviews we bring you, consider supporting the program by visiting my website at SeanKGrady.com and buy me a cup of coffee. Proceeds will go towards helping me continue producing timely content and offset production costs. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize a few of our sponsors of the show who have been amazing partners and are ET Nation legends. If you're looking for a drilling and environmental contracting firm to help you delineate the extent of contamination at your site, then look no further than Cascade Environmental. Cascade has over 37 offices across the country and offers a huge range of environmental and geotechnical drilling, site characterization, and remediation services. With their huge fleet of equipment, nationwide coverage, Cascade is a great choice to support your environmental and infrastructure needs. To learn more, check out their website at cascade-env.com. That's cascade-env.com. Hey, are you looking for an equipment rental company to help you with your next wastewater remediation or waste management project? E-Tank is the only environmental equipment rental company in the industry that offers 100% guaranteed, certified clean temporary liquid storage tanks at no additional cost. This protocol gives peace of mind for the previous customer by limiting their downstream liability, as well as the future customer by preventing any cross-contamination for all of their rental tanks. E-Tank also runs a one-of-a-kind complete maintenance program for all rental items, including liquid-tight roll-off containers, fluid transfer pumps, and filtration items. The next time you are presented with an environmental challenge, call E-Tank to come up with the solution for your problem. I want to thank one of our sponsors, WasteLink. WasteLink is the all-in-one software platform transforming how environmental professionals manage waste, connecting generators, service providers, and disposal facilities in a way that is simple, connected, and transparent. Their platform helps streamline everything from waste profiling and routing to inventory management and billing, giving you the tools you need to operate more efficiently and reduce cost. Whether you're a generator looking for better options or a service provider seeking greater efficiency, WasteLink has you covered. If you're ready to take control of your waste management processes and optimize your business, visit wasteLink.com to schedule a demo today.
And that's the one thing I noticed at EI Digest as well. It was decision makers,
Sure.
and it was the networking with every one of these big industry players, and they're all working together. Now you might see that they're like the competition, but they all work together, and they all kind of have channel partners that they're all doing business together. And for me, coming from the consulting side of the industry, right?
Okay.
Not seeing that part of the industry in operation in real time, real life, I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. All right, this is good. I'm seeing another side of the industry I didn't understand, right? And so to hear, what you're doing with Enfinite there, I mean, wow. I mean, I can't imagine that people who attend won't come away with infinite amounts of networking opportunities and connections, right? I mean, it's gonna be awesome.
Well, I think there's one little story I'll share with you. This happened from last year, okay? And it's, a lot of times one of the challenges, like when you're selling a membership, it's very intangible. What do you get? You get networking, okay? That's a very intangible thing. Let me share with you a real example of what happened last year. We had a member of ours recently joined from Guam, okay? He, a lot of times we tell our members before you join, hey, don't you feel like you're on an island and no one else? He's literally on an island, right? In the Pacific.
Literally in Guam. Jeez.
Yeah.
There's not many options out there either.
No, but it's not like he can talk to his neighbors about, best practices with, liquid recycling and how to keep my driver safe and what are the markets, et cetera, et cetera. So he actually flew into our event last year in California and was there, just was blown away. We're a very hospitable group. If you're a first-time attendee, we host a first-time reception with our board of directors for you. So everybody, you automatically break in to our great network. But here's what happened. I introduced him to one of our board members who's out of Detroit, Michigan. And he's a mid-sized company, not a huge company. They started talking. The guy from Guam extended his trip several days, flew at the invitation to that member in Detroit, and spent 2 or 3 days with him learning how they run their operations to bring back to his organization. That's the type of culture we have at our organization. Massive amounts of sharing, and it's real. A lot of times people are like, I don't know, is it real? I'm like, it's real. Just come experience it one time, and then you're a member for life, essentially.
Wow. Talk about helping, your fellow man and, partner in the industry. That's pretty awesome.
Yes. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
amazing. That is amazing. Well, so this big event's coming up in Florida. Okay, so how do they get information? How do people, find out, where it is, when it is, what's the cost? I mean, kind of summer like, maybe you're an individual that works for a company that may not be a member, so there's that. And
Yeah.
then maybe you're a company who wants to come and be a member, as a company. How does this work?
Sure. So basically, it's a great question, and the answer is a little complex, but I'll try to simplify it here. Typically, we have a program where we want companies that have not participated before, that have not attended an event before. We do have a program where they can attend at the member rate if they haven't attended before in that type of capacity, and we want them to come in. And the cost to participate is a little bit flexible depending on the type of company it is. There's a couple of different categories, but it's very affordable compared to related to conferences.
Yeah.
But I will say this, that the event, to get the direct information, you can go to our website, which is infinite.org, which links to our legacy website. We're in the rebrand process at noranews.org. All the information is up there. But if anybody just sends us an email to Sparker at infinite.org now is our new email address. Send that to me, and I'll get them the information they need. But next year, even if this is a little bit late in the game, just try to get to
Sure.
Florida. Next year we have our winter meeting, which includes our environmental health and safety forum. That's in February in Fort Worth, Texas. Then we're going to have our mid-year meeting next year in Pittsburgh, which will be in June. And then we'll have our annual event, which is going to be in the Palm Springs area next November. And we move this around so that, geographically, it's easier for some companies to get into.
Yeah.
And it's, that. So again, it does, even if you're missing this one, that's okay. We have 3 events a year. And again, if we get back to networking, if you attend 1 event a year, that's great. If you do it 3 times, your networking is accelerated by 3 times, Sean.
Yeah, that's absolutely. That's 3 times more people I can connect with and network with and
Yes.
discover new opportunities to drive business. So
Yes.
I love it. I think it's great. Okay, so infinite.org, right?
Yes.
And then they can get all the details. So that's
Right.
awesome.
Yep.
So let's dive into another topic. I think it's really on top of mind for so many people right now in the industry. It's really about technology. And technology is rapidly transforming waste management and how it's being done. How's Infinite members leveraging innovation like AI, automation, advanced filtration, to improve their services? Or what are you seeing across the board? And is Infinite focusing on technology as a kind of a main theme or topic that they're focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Some of the technology that is even being introduced today has been around for 20 years. I've seen some of these exhibitors at our shows 20 years ago, but at that point, I almost called it bleeding edge technology. It was like
So
a little,
early, right?
it was a little sci-fi, trying to get something out there. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example in just a second. The other thing that we're seeing as a trend, and you're seeing this across all sectors, including ours, is we're a mature marketplace. So you're seeing consolidation happening, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
but with consolidation with larger companies, those companies have a greater ability to adopt technology.
Right.
They have more resources as opposed to maybe a company that has like 10 or 12 trucks, let's say like that. Anyway, going back to technology, one of the things that was shown probably 20 years ago, but really is taking off now is remote tank monitoring. If the number one thing that we do as an industry, it all starts with efficient aggregation of the material. We have to go out and collect this stuff. But guess what? If we don't know how much is in a tank, how do we have effective routes, efficient routes to get from point A to point B?
Right.
Just that's one example. And then obviously all that data has to filter into some sort of technology base that allows us to develop the routes. So we have members that on all aspects of this, tank monitoring in the truck itself, tank monitoring out in the field, having that field going up. And so you're efficiently aggregating, which is a significant cost factor to grab this stuff in. Also on the technology side, we're seeing, if AI is really good at some things and is terrible at others, I can tell you AI is terrible at understanding the music I want to hear on my playlist. Okay. I'm like, it must be
Spotify's not doing that for you.
I'm just saying, it says, oh, songs you might like. I'm like, no, it's artificial unintelligence. But where our AI is really good is like repetitive task, things where there's a data set to kind of balance things against. So, you think about what do we do as an industry for our clients? Compliance. Yeah, we make sure that our customers stay compliant. Okay, that means that the paperwork has to be accurate, and the manifest and all the related paperwork, as you were mentioning earlier with the trucks. That is a perfect way for AI. Some of our software vendors, I know some of them been on your podcast in the past
Yeah.
that are members of
Wasteling.
our.
Love those
Wasteling's
guys.
a great members of ours, and but they're integrating that type of technology. So what you're doing is what used to be very much of a repetitive, or at least a very administrative task type of project.
Yeah.
That's where AI is able to come in and help, and that's just the beginning. I mean, there's so much that's going into it now. We're not even talking about the treatment facilities. That's a whole nother. We're talking about the collection, and that's like
Yeah.
you start because all the if you're running a re-refinery, which there's been a massive transformation on where oil is being processed. So you're now seeing that in these advanced technologies on how they're using technology to make their systems even more efficient. So yeah, it has to be. So the last thing is on our conference, the last conference and this conference, we each have a technology panel where
Okay.
we bring in technology vendors that are attending our event. They come in and they're all given a set amount of time to talk to people in the audience that are really interested in technology, because they can drive efficiencies, which drive profits and success of the business.
Where are you guys doing anything around the whole e-manifest process with your members and advocating or commenting on the process through EPA? Because that seems to be one of the biggest challenges for a lot of companies.
Yes, I would. That falls into the category of. Remember, we were talking about coalitions.
Yeah.
We're not the sometimes we're the lead, and sometimes we work in partnerships with others. We have been working specifically on an e-manifest issue in California because their program is a little different than the federal program, and so
Of course.
so we've been. And again, that's where our members work through us to kind of do it. But yeah, the e-manifest system, it seems like we've been talking about it for forever. I don't know
Right.
how long. And each time you talk to a company, it's like they're complaining about one aspect of it or another aspect of it. And I actually think what a challenge it must be, right, to develop an e-manifest for every application in every state and every type of company. One of the things that was probably more recently done that was that we worked on a little bit was the electronic logs on trucks. That somewhat integrates with the e-manifest, but I know there's issues with is it DOT that is governing this? Who and you have to have the paper copy as well as the electronic copy, and
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, we get involved with it, but as a coalition, because we clearly are not the only ones that are feeling the pain of e-manifests out there.
Yeah. Well, okay. Just curious on that because it's part of this whole technology discussion in some form or fashion. It may not be the main thing driving individual business, but I think it is having a technology challenge for a lot of businesses to put the systems in place to do the reporting. And so that's where some of these big software companies come into play that can help, like Wasteling and others who are integrating into those systems. That's pretty cool. But yeah, for sure. I think that's great. Well, we visited, you visited recently a couple member facilities.
Mhm.
Talk about some of the best practices or trends that stood out to you during a couple of those tours, and maybe talk a little bit about the companies you visited, because you mentioned, you're there in DC, you're not operating a facility. You're not running trucks down the street and picking up liquid waste. The more you can get boots on the ground and actually put your eyes on the facility so you get a conceptual understanding how this thing works for a lot of your members is all the better, right? So talk a little bit about how that helps you and what you saw.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it helps recharge your batteries, right? You get out there and actually see the real stuff. You and I are sitting here on a podcast, right? We're not really doing anything. We're not collecting the
Well,
material.
we're doing some good stuff. We're just not doing the hard, dirty work.
But I'm telling you, sometimes you have to go out and get dirty a little bit. Like Mike
Sure.
Rowe
Yeah.
talks about the dirty jobs and things. And so I had a business trip that I chose to drive up to Cleveland, Ohio. And
Okay.
on the way there, I stopped in Canton, Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Saw 3 different member companies. And I'll tell you, by far, you get into this, you realize how professionally run these operations are.
Right.
We think, it's a dirty recycling or oil job. And you get into it and you realize, man, this is like very, very professionally run operations. I saw 3 different, one was a brand new facility. The other 2 have been around a while, but some of the best practices that were there, or let me tell you, one of the things that was most impressive to me is that we think of these companies as doing one thing, and they're handling so many different materials coming in.
Right.
And you think about the regulatory issues regarding that. You think about the safety issues, regarding that with the lab on the front end coming in. What are we dealing with?
Yeah. Is it flammable? Is it caustic? Is it combustible? What tank does it go into? Right. Where can I store it? Yeah.
Well, and you also have the issue that a lot of times your generator is saying it's this, and you get it on site and it's not that, right?
Yeah, that's a problem.
So
non-conforming waste is not good.
No, but but as at the end of the day, we are the ones that are it's important that we are there taking everything in and handling, like you said, the paperwork, the safety, and these other things. I also found, particularly for some of these, I would call mid-sized companies, the challenges of having to not have specialized departments, right? You think about some of the biggest companies in the space, and they have a whole department for health and safety, and they have a whole department for this. Meanwhile, here you have the operation manager is also responsible for the lab, may also be responsible for the safety going on in the field.
Multiple hats.
It's the proverbial spinning plates, none of them can fall. And I was just sitting there going, I think my head would, if I were in that spot, I think my head would explode. But man, they had cool, calm, and collected. And you're doing all this, and you're trying to maintain a profitable operation. So it's like, but you have to do it right. You have to have health and safety. You have to have all your regulatory stuff in line. And I think you were mentioning earlier, technology is going to be, I think, a help, particularly to companies like that really, they could use something like artificial intelligence or something else, so they could spend more time doing the real work of, really making sure the materials handled properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's good. I mean, it's always good to get get your eyes firsthand on an operation. And I've done hundreds of audits of TSDFs over the years, and it's really great to, you walk in, you see the condition of the property. They get good housekeeping, their paperwork's in order, their systems are in place, their people are well trained and things like that. I mean, you can quickly tell when the operations is a little leaky, right? They're not so strong, and that gives pause and concern for these big generators when those audits are done and identify those challenges, because now they have reputational risk they have to manage, right? So it's important that all those things you just mentioned are in place, and sounds like those facilities you saw were in good shape.
Yes, and I think you're exactly right. What at the end of the day, for those generators, they're looking for compliance, there's so many, and oftentimes if you ever call some of these regulatory departments, whether it's a region or whether it's a state or even a locality, sometimes, hey, how do I do this? And they typically are not going to tell you how to do it. They're going to say, it depends on your situation, right? So then you're sitting there having to try to interpret what the regulations are. And I can tell you, there's often times where you could read 2 different regulations that both apply to you, that you could interpret to say you do it 2 different ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that is, I think that, when you look at these facilities, they make, again, that's why they rely on the network to talk to other companies, to talk to some of the professionals in the space, like you were saying, consultants. We have many that are part of our group as well, trying to do, what we think is supposed to be done. But you bring up a good point. The generator, whether they're a large generator or a small generator, no one wants to become part of a,
Superfund site.
Superfund site, exactly.
Right.
And so, when you start seeing this and realize that the generator has that cradle to grave responsibility, that means that the generator also has a responsibility to know who they're dealing with.
Right.
And again, I'm biased, clearly, but I think that when you look at people that are in the members of our organization, every member has to sign our guiding principles before they join. And the very first one, by far, is that we make environment, health, and the safety a primary part of all decisions as it regards to compliance and to facilities and every policies and procedures. And we focus on that, and we try to make it real. Do mistakes happen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you have a track record, even if a mistake happens, if you have a track record of doing the right thing, man, you're going to come out clean on the other side, because you're trying to do the right thing all the time.
You've got an environmental health and safety, I guess, mid-year conference.
Mhm.
Do you provide, I guess, topics for helping stay in compliance for these operators? What are best practices for permitting, or permitting support, or, here's how you should be focusing on, managing and maintaining your SPCC plans.
Absolutely.
Those type of things. Talk a little bit about, if you could, maybe how you were providing some technical assistance.
Yeah, we just had a meeting. As I was looking around for my notes, I don't see them right here, but we just had a meeting last week with our Environmental Health and Safety Council. We had about 20 people on the phone identifying topics. We look at whatever the most pressing needs for our membership. As an example, as marijuana has become more legalized in many of the states, right? That doesn't impact any of the federal DOT regs. We had police officers that came in and talked about that. We also had those same police officers do a walk around, like, hey, when your driver gets pulled over, this is what we're looking for. These kind of things. SPCC plans. One of the things we also talk about is how do you build a leadership culture on EH&S at the highest levels who are going to have to invest in these type of things.
Yeah.
So we've had that. So the topics that are coming out, again, we have about a dozen or so topics. It's going to boil down to a six session full day program on health and safety. And probably more important than the content that they walk away from that meeting, although I think content's going to be great, the more important part is networking with other health and safety professionals in the liquid recycling space.
Yeah.
We have guys that are getting on the top of trucks. Okay. And there's liquid. We have people, another issue that we have more so now is we're doing field services. So our people are going out off site, and we're now doing work at someone else's site. Who has that ability to say, no, I'm not doing that job, right? It's, and we empower the drivers. We've had lawyers come in and talk about how to prepare for depositions. And so it's a wonderful program. It started off with one of our members, AXA XL Insurance. They brought it to us, and we've been running it for 13 years now. So it's a great program that will be held in February in Fort Worth for next year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I mean, it sounds like the organization is growing, and you guys are doing well. You've got a lot of new members. You've rebranded, and I think you're on the road for huge success in the years to come. Is there any advice you'd give any new companies that are entering in this industrial liquid recycling space, especially regarding either membership, compliance concerns, or anything around sustainability? We didn't touch on sustainability, but I mean, at the heart of what all these member companies are doing is sustainability. And I think one of the things that I've been, really touching on the podcast over the past few years is many of these people, this is what they've been doing their entire career. They
Yes.
just didn't call it sustainability. They were calling it recycling, or, proper waste management, and, reuse and stuff like that. But really, they need to change the vernacular of how they're talking about the services, so it lines up with the rest of the industry and how it's really being viewed, and it is through that sustainability lens. And so talk a little bit about, if you could, that, and what would you do to encourage industries coming into the space?
Well, many companies that are either going to come into the space or are already in the space looking at this. Obviously, I'm very biased. Obviously, I think they should join our organization.
Join. Yeah.
But
Come on.
but realistically, the way that I always tell a company, there's never a hard sell if someone talks to us about the group. If you are involved at all in some aspect of industrial liquid recycling, whether it's emergency response, field services, oil re-refining, and everything in between, product destruction, there's so many areas that really we cover now. If you're involved in any of those areas, the best investment you could ever make is to join an organization. And fortunately, we're the only one in this space to represent that group. But why? Because guess what? No one company has all the answers to this information. The ability, as we talked about, the coopetition between these companies. Where are you going to sell your product? You need advice on this. How about this? This has happened more and more often. Our companies operate huge fleets of vac trucks. Guess what happens in an emergency response? We had 2 trucks that hit each other. There's oil going into a stream, a lot of it. You might have 10 or 12 trucks. You might have to call another company because you need more than 12 vac trucks. And we help support the first responders. So again, when I talked about that company from Guam coming over, being able to share that information. And I think probably the other aspect of it, you go, the other thing that you mentioned was on sustainability, circular economy, recycling. I've been doing this so long that I can't even keep up with all the terms, right? But at the very heart of what we do, right, is
Yeah.
we collect the material that should not be entering the landfill. And that's most important for liquids. Okay.
Right.
If you're collecting tires, nothing against the tire recyclers, but if you throw a tire in a landfill, there's not a lot of bad things that are going to happen from a tire being in a landfill, other than the fact that you can't reuse the material. Most of the stuff it's going to seep into the water, right, into the groundwater. So you have to have this. So to that end, and I was mentioning to you earlier about our new website that we're working on.
Yep.
It's going to be launching in February, and the firm that I have working on it, they go, this is not like any other association website we've ever seen, and it's because we are now going to be doing that industry promotion. That when we were at that conference, where even the largest companies were saying, you know what, we didn't generate this material, and so all this material that we're handling, and no one knows about our industry, about the good things that we're doing in the space. This website is going to have all the top 20 products and services that we offer, and it's going to have a description of each one of those, and it's going to describe it. And underneath it, it's then going to have links to all the companies in our space that do those services.
Nice.
And so it's going to have, it's going to have a branding aspect for it. But I think that the other thing that I've seen is that what we are attempting to do as an association, from a PR perspective, is really we should be celebrated for what we're doing for sustainability.
100%.
We should be celebrated. The regulators should be working with us in that regard. Our website, the Rebrand video that you mentioned there, what we're doing is we're tearing down the walls around these facilities that used to exist. People are kind of like, oh, what's happening back there? It must be bad. No, let's have a tour, right? And so what we are going to do as the association, we're providing the air support. We're going to be telling the story in a unified way, all the companies speaking as one. Then our members that are having to deal with the local regulators or the local communities, they will be the ground support, and we'll be working in together to make sure that our industry is recognized for what we do for the environment.
Well, that's great. That's great, Scott. I mean, I think you guys are doing a great job. I love, what you guys are doing, the rebranding, the new website, some of those priorities of, helping members really kind of participate in the whole process. That's really great. And I love the vision you guys have. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. We're going to make sure that we get this information out on the podcast and about the conference that's coming up in next couple weeks in November.
Yeah.
So if there's any partner members who haven't signed up yet, they see this podcast, they still maybe have a little time to get in there and sign up. But nothing else, it'll give a great opportunity for new members to consider joining and get in touch with you guys. So really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us all about the Enfinite and the great infinite ways you guys are helping the industry grow and recycle and create the circular economy.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate the time today.
Thanks for listening and watching the show. If you enjoyed the show, then please share it with your friends and coworkers on social media and tell somebody in person. Thanks for being with us, ET Nation.